What event made you see your mom in a whole new light? I was 23 when my mom called me crying at 2 a.m. This was weird because my mom never cried, like ever. She was the type who'd put a band-aid on everything and tell you to walk it off. Danny, your father's in the hospital, heart attack, you need to come home. I drove 4 hours from college to get there. When I walked into the waiting room, I expected to see my mom being her usual tough self. Instead, she was curled up in a plastic chair looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. The doctor came out and explained Dad was stable but needed surgery. Triple bypass. Recovery would take months. Mom just nodded and asked practical questions about insurance and visiting hours. That's when it hit me. Dad handled all the money stuff. Mom had been a stay-at-home mom for 20 years. I wasn't sure she even knew how to pay bills online. The next morning, I went to their house to help sort things out. That's when I saw something that changed everything. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table with a calculator, a stack of papers, and Dad's laptop. She had spreadsheets open that I'd never seen before, detailed budgets going back 15 years. Mom, what is all this? She looked up like she'd been caught doing something wrong. Oh, this? I've always done the books, honey. Your dad's terrible with numbers. Wait, what? My whole life, I thought Dad was the financial guy. He was always the one talking about mortgage rates and investment accounts. Mom just smiled and nodded during those conversations. You've been doing the finances this whole time? She laughed. Danny, your father can barely balance a checkbook. He's great at his job, but money management? That's not his thing. I sat down completely confused. But Dad always talks about the budget and he repeats what I tell him. We figured it worked better that way. People took him more seriously when he talked to the bank or the investment guy. She showed me folder after folder of documents. Every bill was organized by month and year. She had tracked every expense, every savings goal, every investment decision for 2 decades. Mom, this is incredible. You've been managing everything? Well, yeah. How do you think we paid off the house early or saved enough for your college? Your dad's a smart man, but he'd spend everything on fishing gear if I let him. I was speechless. Growing up, I always saw Dad as the responsible one and Mom as the fun parent who made cookies and drove us to soccer practice. Why didn't you ever tell us? She shrugged. It worked. Your father got respect at work. I got to run things how I wanted at home. Plus, you kids never worried about money because everything always seemed under control. The surgery went well, but Dad needed weeks of recovery. During that time, I watched my mom handle everything. She negotiated with insurance companies, managed his medications, coordinated with doctors, and ran the household without missing a beat. One afternoon, I found her on the phone with their financial advisor. Listen, Mark, I know you usually talk to my husband, but I'm the one who's been making these decisions for 20 years. Now, about reallocating the portfolio, she was confident, knowledgeable, and completely in charge. This was not the same woman who used to ask Dad to handle the grown-up stuff when we were kids. Later that day, I confronted her. Mom, you've been pretending to be helpless for years. She smiled. Not helpless, sweetie, just smart. Your generation calls it managing expectations. But why the act? Because men like your father need to feel needed. And honestly, it was easier to let him think he was in charge while I actually ran things. Less arguing, more cooperation. I thought about all the times Mom would say things like, ask your father, or Dad handles that. Meanwhile, she was secretly managing every aspect of our lives. Dad knows, doesn't he? Of course he knows. We've been married 26 years, but we both play our roles. He gets to feel important, I get things done my way, and you kids grew up thinking everything was stable. When Dad came home from the hospital, I watched them differently. She'd still ask him questions about his decisions, and he'd give answers that were clearly rehearsed. But now I could see her subtle nods and the way she'd guide conversations. Your mom's the smartest person I know, Dad told me one day when she was out grocery shopping. Always has been. I just do what she tells me and try to look like I know what I'm talking about. Turns out my parents had been running the most successful partnership I'd ever seen. I just never realized who the actual CEO was.